Episode 1. Enjoy. Nick told me this story over dinner before I ate him. My name is Nick. I live in an abandoned house in the middle of a swamp. People try to avoid these places because they are afraid of me. In fact, I am not dangerous. I am just sometimes hungry. That evening, Nick got lost in the swamp and stumbled upon my little house by chance. I invited him over for dinner. We lit up a fire, and I cooked my signature stew of frogs and snakes. Nick tasted it cautiously, and even praised my culinary skills. Over dinner, he told me his story. Nick lived in a nearby town with his parents and little sister Emmy. She was only 5 years old. That summer, Nick got a job as a camp counselor at a local summer camp. The kids at the camp simply adored Nick for his kind nature, sense of humor, and thrilling campfire tales at night. Every day, the kids eagerly awaited nightfall to gather around the fire and listen to another spooky story from Nick. One night, he told the children a legend about an evil witch who allegedly lives in a swamp near their camp. According to Nick, at night, this witch goes hunting to lure careless children to her home, and then she turns them into ugly monsters and makes them serve her. The kids listened to this story, holding their breath and paralyzed with horror. A chill ran down their spines, and their imagination painted frightening pictures. After such scary stories, the children then had trouble falling asleep. The next morning at breakfast, Nick did not find his little sister Emmy among the children. He searched the entire camp, asking the kids and counselors if anyone had seen the girl. But Emmy vanished into thin air. In despair, Nick ran to the camp director and reported his missing sister. He immediately sounded the alarm. Everyone rushed to search for the lost 5-year-old girl. Her tracks led to a swamp nearby the camp. Nick's heart sank with foreboding. After all, according to the legend, the evil witch from his scary story lived there. Could it be that the fairy tale turned out to be true, and now Emmy fell into the clutches of this monster? Armed with a flashlight, Nick slogged through the marsh, shouting his sister's name. For a long time he wandered among the fog on tufts, stumbling on snags and slipping in treacherous spots. Finally, ahead, a faint child's cry could be heard. Nick rushed towards the sound and found himself near a dilapidated shack in the middle of the swamp. Emmy's voice came from inside. Circling around the hut, Nick cautiously peeked into the filthy, mildewed little window. Inside, by the cauldron, stood a hunched hag with wrinkled greenish skin and a hooked nose. Next to her on the floor sat the tied-up Emmy, crying her eyes out. The old woman was muttering to herself, throwing various nasty ingredients into the cauldron. It became clear to Nick that before him was the very witch from his scary fairy tale, and now she was brewing a potion to turn little Emmy into a monster. Adrenaline surged through Nick's veins. He charged and smashed through the flimsy door and burst into the shack. The witch shrieked in fright at the sight of him. Nick grabbed Emmy in his arms, cut the ropes, and ran out of the house. The angry howl of the old woman chased after them for a long time as the siblings fled from that cursed place. At the camp, everyone welcomed them with cheers and hugs. Emmy fearfully told her brother that she had gotten lost in the woods, and then this creepy lady dragged her into her house and tied her up. Fortunately, Nick managed to rescue his little sister from a terrible fate just in time. After this incident, Nick forever forbade himself from going to that damned swamp and telling children scary bedtime stories. He vowed that from now on, he would protect Emmy from even the shadow of danger. Nick concluded his story with a sad sigh. I felt sorry for the poor guy, and even shared the leftovers of my meager dinner with him. However, sympathy didn't stop me from eventually eating Nick in the end. Can't pass up a chance to replenish myself. The next day, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check out the story about the swamp witch myself. Getting to the dilapidated shack, I cautiously peeked in the window. Inside was empty and quiet, only some rags laying around and embers smoldering in the fireplace. I was about to leave when I suddenly heard a suspicious rustle behind me. I turned around and barely had time to jump aside. Some dark, shaggy beast with bared fangs came rushing at me with a shriek. I got a better look at it. Mangy fur, crazed eyes, and long claws on its limbs more akin to paws. It seems before me was that very witch, only transformed into some kind of animal. The monster rushed after me, sticking out a long, slimy tongue and loudly barking. I had no choice but to flee these cursed places at full speed. Luckily, I burst out of the swamp into an open area where the creature stopped, not daring to leave its domain. I safely returned home, catching my breath and contemplating what I saw. It seems Nick's story turned out to be pure truth. This place is really cursed. Since then, I've also tried to avoid that swamp. However, curiosity started gnawing at my mind again. I decided to go back to the abandoned shack and try to lure the witch out of her lair. This time I took a hunting rifle with me. It may come in handy. Approaching the hut, I called out to the witch. An angry cough came from inside. I fired a shot into the air and immediately saw a hairy creature dart past the window. Looks like I made her mad. The monster leapt out of the house and rushed at me. I fired again, but the beast was so fast that the bullet only grazed her side. Crazed with fury, the monster pounced at me. I had to retreat while shooting on the go. I winged the monster several times, which made it even more enraged. Bullets whistled around us as we battled, smashing through bushes and trees. Finally, the monster collapsed, dead, riddled with lead. Coming closer, I saw that the creature resembled both a wolf and a human. It seems this really was that witch who turned herself into a werewolf. Now this cursed place is forever rid of her. I returned home a hero, proud of my victory. But joy quickly gave way to alarm. After all, the witch may have had some other monsters left that she created over the years, or her curse is still in effect, turning people into monsters. The next day I went to the swamp again, this time well armed. Examining the witch's shack, I found a ladder under the floorboards leading down to a basement. Descending there with a torch, I saw a small cave. In the corners sat chained, miserable creatures with deformed bodies. Some had wings or hooves instead of hands and feet. They looked at me with eyes full of suffering. These were her victims. I freed the poor wretches from captivity and led them out into the light of day. They whimpered piteously, looking at me. I understood they needed help. Taking them to my home, I started treating these poor souls with herbs and incantations. Gradually, the witch's curse began to weaken. The human monsters regained a human form, although some remained maimed. I gave them shelter, and we became one big, friendly family. Thus this gloomy forest gradually filled with laughter and joy. I gained a bunch of new friends, and the witch's curse was lifted. We often gather around the fire in the evenings. Sometimes I even tell my friends scary stories remembering Nick. Only now, I know that fairy tales are just fairy tales, and real evil can be defeated if you don't lose hope. You listened to the end of my first story. Thank you. I'm very interested in your opinion. If you have an interesting story, and you would like me to voice it in my videos, send it to me. I will be very happy. Subscribe or the next dinner will be you. Just kidding, or maybe not. And now I have to go. See you soon.